I think that part of the conversation has to include the fact that we're living in an hour, I also said this, where masculinity is under attack. And let me be very clear, there are certainly expressions, there are certainly uh, um, side effects or instances of um, toxic masculinity, right? And there are certainly abuses. I cannot explain that or express that enough. However, I think that part of the agenda of hell today is to present all masculinity as toxic. And the reality is, all masculinity is not toxic. Men are supposed to engage and interact and express and communicate differently. That's part of what makes us such a beautiful combination when you put the male with the female, when you put, masculine with feminine. There is supposed to be a distinction and a difference. And sometimes we end up, especially young men of color, we end up medicating and putting on Ritalin and putting in, restricted programming because he's just so active. He's supposed to be active. He's just into stuff. He's supposed to be into stuff. He sometimes he just won't sit down. Well, teach better. He's bored. He finished his work already, right? And I'm speaking very generally that there are certainly outliers to all of this, but we're so quick to demonize that wild at heart without realizing that God put that wild at heart there. It's that wildness that'll make a man get up and go to work to provide for a family even when he don't feel like it. It's that wildness that'll make him get up and go answer that door when it knocks at 2 in the morning. You don't know who or what's on the other side. You're not hiding under your bed telling your wife, girl, you go see who it is. No, I'm going downstairs because that wildness is in there. It's that wildness that'll make him jump in between a dog and his child that's chasing him. You understand? And so my statement, which I absolutely stand by, was rooted in just the fact that as wonderful as our mothers are, and God knows they are wonderful, they are necessary, they are needed, they are invaluable. And there are a lot of single moms that are watching and will watch and even saw what I said in that service, which again I stand by, that are doing such amazing jobs raising little kings and raising little queens. But the reality is the best mom in the world still can't make a boy a man. She can nurture, she can raise, she can be all that she can be, but there has to be a male figure present somewhere. Now, what happens? My father's child passed away, died in an accident or at war, whatever your context is. Maybe life happened and the biological father moved or refused to step up to his responsibility. Whatever the case is, that's not to say that this boy is just lost in. No, but this is where community comes in. Maybe that male figure is a coach. Maybe it's a youth pastor or a senior pastor. Maybe it's an uncle or a grandfather, or maybe even in some cases a distant figure that you observe, never even get to really have a conversation with, but I watch and I pay attention to how he models and how he carries himself as a man. There has to be an example somewhere, and that's why men are important and necessary and can't be replaced.
It's the Logan Power Show. Inspirational and motivational. It's the Logan Power Show. Informational to help you grow. Logan Power Show. And now the host, Calvin Logan.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Logan Power Show, where we speak faith, vision, and purpose into the lives of our viewers around the globe. Today, I have a trailblazing guest who is shifting the culture in ministry, media, and the marketplace. He's the senior pastor of Spirit and Truth Church, the CEO of the Moore Group Enterprises, and the visionary behind the Young Leaders Conference, an international movement that has impacted thousands and made history in faith and leadership. He's been featured in the Washington Post, recognized with the United States Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award by President Joe Biden. Under his leadership, churches have expanded to across states, debt-free, while feeding and serving thousands each week. It is my honor and privilege to welcome to the show Pastor Mark Moore Jr. Welcome, sir. Thank you for coming on.
What's up, man? Honored to be here. Honored to be here, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Again, I appreciate your time and your patience. I definitely put it as an honor. I don't take it lightly when anybody gives their time here to us, but we definitely want to allow this time and space to get into it. Well, again, we want to thank you. And let's start beginning. What inspired your journey into ministry and leadership at such a young age?
Man, great question. Let me again just reiterate how honored I am to be on here with you, man. Love what you're doing, and just, I mean, sincerely grateful. We need these kinds of conversations to push the corporate conversation forward, man. And so thank you for what you do. But in regard to your question, man, I am an alien along with my brother and sister in that we are fifth generation PKs on both sides of our family. So five generations up, grands, great grands, parents, grands, great grands, great grands, so forth on. We've been in ministry ever since we came to America. And so when you talk about what started me or got me going, it's the fact that I was blessed to grow up in that kind of incubator, that kind of, environment that fed and fostered a love for ministry at an early age, man. So, being in it, being around it, being, deep in it, watching it literally every day, all day, resulted in that drive and that desire to want to serve God in this way.
Absolutely, Pastor. One thing, you graduated from Morehouse College, HBCU, with a degree in psychology. How has that background influenced your pastoral and leadership approach?
Well, I went to Morehouse because I wanted to be very honest with you. I had an idea that I was going to be in ministry. I had an idea, again, when you the pastor's son and every guest preacher that comes, if they're not doing well, it's always a guaranteed prophecy to look at you. Yeah, I'm seeing ministry on you, man. Come on. Really? That's your prophetic word? So, I eventually, though, by the time I was at Morehouse, felt an urge to preach. I felt a call. And again, because I was raised in it, I didn't want to just jump into it just because I wanted to do it. I wanted to make sure, it was God and that I wasn't, you know, mishearing or misstepping. And so I couldn't fight it anymore. And I acknowledged that call freshman year. But when it comes to my major, sociology, I'll be very honest, I picked it knowing that I would probably preach and wanting something that would kind of help me try to understand God's people a little bit better. I'm not a math guy. I love history, but what am I going to do with a history degree? Political science was intriguing, but I said I'm not going into politics. I do enough politics in church, right? So I did sociology really with a heart, hoping that it would help me understand God's people better. And knowing that I was probably going to enter ministry even before I selected my college, I'll be very honest. I said, I don't want to end up preaching. I know that's what's going to happen, but I still need to go to school. I still need to study, and I still need, and I'll be very honest with you, I wanted a church or a school rather, that when I was being introduced to preach at the church, when they read that bio, I could sit there real deep and say, oh, yeah, he's a graduate of Morehouse College. And I could say, that's right, that's right. Oh, he went to Morehouse. Oh, that's good. That's it. I'm going to end up in ministry, so I could almost go anywhere. But that was the heart or the mindset behind sociology. Help me understand God's people a little bit better. Yeah.
Yes, sir. You hear about it, the Joshua and Caleb generation. You hear about the baton being passed. You talked about your lineage of going from generation to generation. And there is a fight. You see a lot of times where the generation prior is not willing to give that baton with, with ease, or like, it's your time. And you started something that the Young Leaders Conference, where you went from 50 attendees to over 5,000 registrants worldwide. When looking back at it, what was the vision behind the Young Leaders Conference? And did you ever imagine it would grow this large?
Uh, Great question. I knew it was going to grow. Yeah, I'll say it this way. I thought it was going to grow. Uh, Maybe a better way to say it is I hoped it was going to grow, right? But it did. And, 50 to 5,000. And I think that the reason that it grew, Logan, Calvin, is because the heart behind it was pure and it was different and it was original. Our initial launch pad, to be very honest, going all the way to the beginning, was really rooted in the book of Malachi. Don't nobody get nervous. Nobody log out. We're not about to raise an offering. Ushers, you can leave the doors open. No, I'm not talking about will a man rob God? Because, we hear Malachi, we immediately go to will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me in tithe and offering. I'm not talking about that. Malachi also talks about in the last chapter, he says, in the last days, I will send my prophet, and he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the sons, hearts of the sons to the fathers, unless I smite the earth with the curse. And what really prompted us to begin was the realization that if there is not this turning of hearts, then a curse is going to hit the earth. And I felt that much of the curse that we saw in our families, in our communities, in our churches, I felt that much of that curse was rooted in the fact that there had not been a turning of hearts. And so the initial goal was to really bring generations together and to facilitate, intergenerational dialogue, to facilitate just the coming together of generations. And I feel that there is a powerful, powerful, powerful thing that happens when generations stop fighting, stop competing, and begin to collaborate. Because one of the things that we built the conference on is the idea that collaboration is better than competition.
And piggybacking off collaboration, you guys did something that was very powerful. You paid off $2 million in medical debts. I repeat, $2 million. My biggest question, how did that initiative come about? And what impact did it have on the people that you guys helped?
Well, the initiative came, we talk a lot in faith circles and in church about, relevance. That's such a popular buzzword, relevance, 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 relevance. But I think that the most relevant thing you can do, I can do, we can do as ministry leaders, the most relevant thing we can do is, as cliche as it might sound, is to be like Jesus. Um, we want to dim lights, and nothing wrong with that. We want to bring in technology and LED, nothing wrong with that. We want to, be trendy in our lingo and in our attire, nothing wrong with that. But the beautiful thing about the gospel of Jesus Christ is that it is the ultimate relevance. It is the ultimate source of relevance. Jesus is never irrelevant. And sometimes I think that we preach Jesus, but we don't preach what Jesus preached. And Jesus preached the kingdom. Jesus preached service. Jesus preached through his physical ministry, through the precedent that he laid out. He preached the power of meeting needs with love, physical needs, natural needs. Everybody wants to preach to people, and that's great. We need preaching. But what I love about Jesus' example is he's, I want to preach to you, but I notice that y'all's stomachs are growling. So maybe you could hear my message a little bit better if you weren't starving. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to feed you first, and then I'm going to preach to you. It's been said, and I think it's true. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so the initiative was birthed out of just a need in our community in the city of Atlanta, which is the home, the headquarters. for our ministry and for the conference. And we looked around, man, and saw there was a need. And we saw that medical debt is the number one source of debt for people in this country. And there were millions of dollars worth of it just within, a stone's throw, so to speak, of our convention center. And so we said, hey, let's do something about it. And so we purchased the debt, collaborated with the right organization, purchased the debt for pennies on the dollar, and sent everyone letters in the mail saying, hey, we thank you. Well, we want you to know rather that your debt has been paid by Jesus and by the Young Leaders Conference, and we want you to be blessed, be encouraged. Da, da, da. Now, you asked, if I heard you correctly, how did that impact the people that we did it for, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to be honest with you. I'll be very honest with you. We did this in 2019, right? And all of these households, I mean, some of them $3,000 worth, some 23,000, 50, 12,000, what, just all kinds of these huge amounts. And I'll be honest with you. I thought when we get these letters, man, we're going to get calls and emails and cards, and people are going to march in the street singing YLC's praises. And oh my God, this thing changed my life. I'm expecting, we put our information in there, mailing and emails. And I said, man, we're probably going to have to upgrade to a more premium email plan because surely they're going to shut our email account down from so many responses and so much feedback and people wanting to name their children after the conference. This is little YLC, whatever, right? And I'm like, man, it's going to happen. So day happens, send out the notices, and I'm just sitting there waiting. So I'm every 5 minutes, I'm touching our admin at the time saying, hey, have the emails started coming in yet? No, not yet. Not yet. Okay, they're coming, they're coming. An hour went by, 2 hours went by, 12 hours went by, a day went by, 3 days went by, a week went by, 2 weeks went by. As the Lord is my witness, we did not get one single thank you. We didn't get a phone call. We didn't get an email. We didn't get a letter. We didn't get anything. And I'll be honest with you. Okay, so this is 2019. This is 2019. We do it in August. In December, I don't know if it was December. A few months later, Dr. Jamal Bryant, my big brother, amazing gift to the world, New Birth Cathedral, they do the same thing, I think for like a lesser amount. I think they did like 1 million, which is, of course, amazing. When I tell you people were in the street, they were on the news. People were getting off the exit of New Birth, walking on walkers and on canes. I just got to tell them, man, thank you. They're on the news, CNN crying. I said, wait, hold on, why we ain't get no thank yous, right? Yeah, it's like right. But here's how God worked, man. This is 2019. We did this, please hear me, for the communities and around the Atlanta airport district, which is where the convention center is. And we did all of the neighboring zip codes around. And what's interesting to me, this is 2019. Now, we started our church, Spirit of Truth, in 2023. So 4 years after we did the medical debt, we started our church. And a year after that, in 2024, we moved into our Atlanta campus, going somewhere. 5 years after we do the medical debt, we move into our Atlanta campus, our own building. God blesses us, right? I did not realize it until after we purchased the building, moved in. I'm driving around the community praying, and I pulled around the corner. I'm at a light next to a hospital. I remember I said, wait a minute, I've been here. I said, oh, I know why we're here. I know where I was. We did a video or a drop for the news, Channel 2, Action News here in Atlanta. We did an interview. They interviewed us because they heard about our $2 million medical debt payoff. And the news met me, interviewed me in front of the hospital in the, watch this, in the community that we paid the highest amount of debt off for. The most amount, the largest amount that we paid for a zip code. We did an interview on the news in front of that hospital. It hit me because 5 years after doing that, I'm in front of that same hospital at a light, not for an interview, not headed somewhere else, but because I just pulled out of the parking lot of our New Atlanta church. And that's when it hit me. 5 years ago, Grace, nobody said thank you from that community. Nobody said we appreciate it, good looking out. But man, y'all helped us. Nobody said anything. But 5 years later, God told us thank you because he gave us that church, ironically, in the same community that we paid off the biggest piece of that $2 million in. So it was as if God said, it took a little longer. Now, oh God, this is crazy. Here's what's phenomenal. We paid off $2 million worth of medical debt. God blessed us with a $5 million property. So, yeah, how did the people say thank you? How did it impact the people? They had $2 million worth of medical debt forgiven. Nobody said thank you, so I don't know how it impacted them, but I do know God said thank you, and He blessed us in the same place that we sold. So that's our story, man.
Absolutely. And to God be the glory. The Bible says it's better to be a cheerful giver and God will reward you. And sometimes you got to ask, sometimes you got to say, do I want the people's reward? Or I want God's reward. But sometimes God's reward is going to override what you want from the people. So it's a
Yeah,
blessing, Pastor, just to see that your fruit that you sowed, God honored the seed that you sowed. Since we're moving on to how you've impacted not only in person but digitally, you have been called a digital pioneer in ministry. During the pandemic, 5 years ago, you reached over 60,000 subscribers. What were the key strategies behind that success? And the reason why I asked that is because since 2020, a lot of churches have sort of fallen apart. They haven't survived. They're still trying to catch up to why others have spearheaded themselves way past them. So, what is sort of the key success to what God has given you the strategy for?
man, I think that it's really just about meeting people where they are. There's so many tips and tricks and do this and don't do that and this is the shortcut and this is the reality is, and we're actually knocking on 100,000 subscribers now to that primary page. We're over 100 between platforms. But I think, man, that the real thing is just being authentic and speaking to your audience. Sometimes I think we slow ourselves down and we miss out on a window because we're trying to do what everybody else is doing, oftentimes only because everybody else is doing it. Why? We already have it, and then we end up complaining about a lack of support or people not pushing, people hating, all of this, all of this, all of this. Sometimes it's not that they're hating or not supporting, it's just that they saw this already. That's all. Sometimes they're supporting the original version of it. They're supporting the one that God actually gave it to. And, God is not obligated, man, to bless who we pretend to be. And so I think, man, that the best shortcut, the best strategy, the best whatever, is to just be who God called, made, assigned, destined you to be, and focus on that, man. So we've created original content, and just spoken to the people that are listening for our voice. And I think that that's a lesson that every leader, visionary, thinker, creative should embrace. The importance of just speaking to the. Don't worry about who don't want to hear you. That's not your audience. Why are you? Why? What do I look like going to McDonald's as a manager or an executive and being mad at all of the people in line at Chick-fil-A. They want chicken sandwiches. Let them go get their chicken sandwiches. I sell burgers. I sell tacos. Whatever I do. Let the people that want that get that. But I'm going to stay right here and I'm going to keep talking to the people that want what I have come where I am. So that's the key, man. Just authenticity, being who you are, speaking to who God assigned to your voice.
Amen. Definitely don't respect your time, Pastor. Under your leadership, Spirit and Truth has grown exponentially. Now with multiple services across multiple campuses, including a new one in Detroit, Michigan. What has been your leadership strategy to grow, expand, and still remain debt free?
Ah, man, to God be the glory. Let me say that. I think that great question. Our strategy, man, and I want to give you something deep and profound and something that we came up with that we invented, we curated. But the reality is, man, it's God's timing. It's God's timing. We struck when the iron was hot. We moved at the speed of obedience, man, and just watch God do it for us. That's the big picture answer. From a micro level, though, because I don't want to just, oh, he just don't want to tell us. No, it's not that. It's just that from a micro level, we really try to embrace what we call sensible sanctification. The idea that you can be saved, sanctified, Holy Ghost filled, and still be educated and still be excellent and still be involved in community and still be involved in civic affairs and still be culturally in tune, all of those things. And we've seen again back to people being assigned to your voice. We've seen that there are people that are looking for that. So I can come to church, hear a prophetic word, watch God move, see all of these things, miracle signs, wonders, and church doesn't have to be 6 hours, you know. And we can have a foot in education, and we can be involved in outreach and community. Because the knock against a lot of us that come from a sanctified or Pentecostal background is that all y'all want to do is shout, all y'all want to do is run, all y'all want to do is dance. And so we've tried to be in the community and push different kingdom agendas, and it's worked for us. We invest in our people, we invest in our experience, and it's working for us. And then furthermore, let me add this: knowing where you belong, um, knowing where you've been assigned. Detroit, for example, why would you go from Atlanta to Detroit? That's such a random place. Why would you pick Detroit? Da, 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 da. Why not Birmingham or Miami or Houston or DC? Well, my mom was from Detroit. Okay. My grandparents were in Detroit all of my life. I have family there, aunts, uncles. I grew up part-time, essentially, in Detroit, outside of Detroit. Summers were spent there, and we have people that are part of our family, our ministry, that had joined Atlanta as virtual members that had family and friends in Detroit that wanted what we had. And we took a faith step, and God has blown our mind up there, and He's been doing it. So knowing who you've been called to, where you've been called, and moving in that.
Yes, sir. Last year, 2024, you were honored in a big way. You received the 2024 United States Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, which is not given to everybody. How do you feel when you were honored with that recognition? Because you mentioned earlier that you didn't want to get involved in the political sector, but you have been a real component of getting the church involved, letting the community know I'm an activist and I want the community to get better. But the government recognized you for your hard work last year in 2024. How did you feel about that? How did that change your perspective?
Um, you know, Thank you, number one. I think that, it's always good to feel appreciated. Everybody wants to feel seen. Everybody wants to feel, like your labor is not in vain. And so, that's what it was. Um, the hard work, and you can tell a lot of hard work has been going on consistently, y'all. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm exhausted. I've been up all day. It's early, but I've been up for a long time. Been to the gym, all of that, trying to work. But it's good to be appreciated, man. It's good to feel like you're not, you know, just going through motions. The Clark sisters asked the question via song, is my living in vain? You know, and the answer we want to hear, of course, is no, of course not. It's not all in vain. And so things like that are just reminders that people, see what we're trying to do, and it's not going unnoticed. So that's encouraging to kind of keep on going.
Yes, sir. A couple more questions. I know your time is valuable, and I'm like yourself, getting up early, a family man. You had sparked a huge conversation. I know you're a parent. You talked about, and you were addressing, no offense, you said,
You
hey,
said I'm a parent. I'm not a parent.
not a parent, that you were addressing it as a father.
Oh, okay. Wait, hold on, wait.
No,
What Bible are you reading?
not a parent. No,
All right.
no, you were addressing, for instance,
Uh-huh.
as from a parent perspective, you were addressing, like you were telling a lot of the young people, and you're addressing the ladies, like, listen, I get it. I appreciate what you have done. I've appreciated all that you have done.
Mhm.
But in some of these things, like we especially talk to the young boys, because I know in society, young boys, especially young Black and brown boys, are affected in a very strong way here in the United States. And you said specifically, and I don't want to take out of context. Let me know if I'm wrong. That there are certain things that a woman cannot raise a young man on. A male has to be present to actually teach them, to be able to make them become who they are. And I just wanted to ask what led you to go down that route, because you see more times, and you've seen statistically, a lot of males are not really in church like you would like to have it. And they are predominantly a female arena with not as many males present. So what led you to make that kind of comment, knowing that the congregation itself and as a whole, holistically, is not dominant in that realm?
You just answered the question. You absolutely just answered the question. Because there are not a lot of people, a lot of men, I should say, in that area. Uh, that's why we have to talk about it. Why are there not a lot of men in church? I think that part of the reason is because we have presented and pushed this idea and this image of a Christian man that is simply just not biblical. We've pushed this idea of a Christian man that is passive and timid and soft and weak and flaccid, and if you can't sing or play an instrument, or if you're not the preacher, then there's nothing for you to do. You got to work the parking lot. I work outside all week. I ain't trying to come to church and work in the parking lot. You could be on security. I don't want to be on security. You understand? So I think that we have to speak to it, because whatever you feed is going to grow, and I think men need to know that you matter here outside of just working a door or directing traffic in a parking lot. And so I think that part of the conversation has to include the fact that we're living in an hour. I also said this, where masculinity is under attack. And let me be very clear, there are certainly expressions, there are certainly side effects or instances of um, toxic masculinity, right? And there are certainly abuses. I cannot explain that or express that enough. However, I think that part of the agenda of hell today is to present all masculinity as toxic. And the reality is, all masculinity is not toxic. Men are supposed to engage and interact and express and communicate differently. That's part of what makes us such a beautiful combination when you put the male with the female, when you put, masculine with feminine. There is supposed to be a distinction and a difference. And sometimes we end up, especially young men of color, we end up medicating and putting on Ritalin and putting in, restricted programming because he's just so active. He's supposed to be active. He's just into stuff. He's supposed to be into stuff. Sometimes he just won't sit down. Well, teach better. He's bored. He finished his work already, right? And I'm speaking very generally that there are certainly outliers to all of this, but we're so quick to demonize that wild at heart without realizing that God put that wild at heart there. It's that wildness that'll make a man get up and go to work to provide for a family even when he don't feel like it. It's that wildness that'll make him get up and go answer that door when it knocks at 2 in the morning. You don't know who or what's on the other side. You're not hiding under your bed telling your wife, girl, you go see who it is. No, I'm going downstairs because that wildness is in there. It's that wildness that'll make him jump in between a dog and his child that's chasing him. You understand? And so my statement, which I absolutely stand by, was rooted in just the fact that as wonderful as our mothers are, and God knows they are wonderful, they are necessary, they are needed, they are invaluable. And there are a lot of single moms that are watching and will watch and even saw what I said in that service, which again I stand by, that are doing such amazing jobs raising little kings and raising little queens. But the reality is the best mom in the world still can't make a boy a man. She can nurture, she can raise, she can be all that she can be, but there has to be a male figure present somewhere. Now, what happens? My father's child passed away, died in an accident or at war, whatever your context is. Maybe life happened and the biological father moved or refused to step up to his responsibility. Whatever the case is, that's not to say that this boy is just lost in. No, but this is where community comes in. Maybe that male figure is a coach. Maybe it's a youth pastor or a senior pastor. Maybe it's an uncle or a grandfather, or maybe even in some cases a distant figure that you observe, never even get to really have a conversation with, but I watch and I pay attention to how he models and how he carries himself as a man. There has to be an example somewhere, and that's why men are important and necessary and can't be replaced.
Yes, sir. And for those that are watching right now, I want you to understand that we are talking about it's a pandemic going on, and we're giving an alarm that we're trying to help out those that don't have the help. And final question, I know you're a man of so many different talents. What's the next for you? What is God saying is the next phase of what you got to do to get you there? Because being a single pastor, not married yet, not having kids, you're on a different tier where people try to attack you in so many different ways, and people try to protect what God has. So what is, I guess, your next? Because it's always the people say, pastor single, gotta get pastor married right now. Pastor gotta have, get married, have kids, a family, blah, blah, blah. But there's a process for everything. But what is your next? What is God saying you gotta do in this season?
Well, definitely, want to be, desire to be married and father. That is the goal. That is the plan. But what I'm not going to do is put it on the clock, put it on a timer, and I let other people pressure me into something that God doesn't have for me, or someone that God doesn't have for me. I'd rather have a 15-year, a 20-year happy, healthy, godly marriage than a 55-year wedding anniversary. We can't step. We hate each other for the last 42 years. No, I want to do it right. I don't want to have a first wife. I don't want to have an ex-wife. I want a wife, and I want her to be it. And so I'm going to move at the speed of obedience. I can't afford to be pressured or pushed because there are too many other people connected to my decision. And that's a decision that has major consequences. And so that will come when it comes. But as far as next, I'll just say this. We're certainly focused on the church and on building that and taking that to the next level. But, um, you know, I used to host conferences. I used to. I used to. I used to host big gatherings, and I retired. But I'll just say you never know what God will do in 2026. You never know how things will come back around. That's all I'm saying. So that's it. No further comment.
Yes, sir. No one hold you to it. Again, what a powerful conversation. Pastor Mark Moore Jr., thank you. It's proof that when you walk in purpose, lead with vision, and serve with heart, lives are changed. Cities are impacted and generations are empowered. If you were blessed by today's episode, make sure you like, share, and subscribe because this is the kind of leadership we need in this season. To Pastor Moore, thank you for sharing your wisdom and walk with us today. And to our audience, never stop dreaming, building, and believing. This has been the Logan Power Show where faith and action meets. Until next time, stay inspired, stay empowered, and stay in position. Y'all have a blessed one.
It's the Logan Power Show. Inspirational and motivational. It's the Logan Power Show. Informational to help you grow. Logan Power Show.